Welcome to the Spiggle Law Firm podcast, where we help people who've been fired or afraid they might be and discuss other interesting legal topics. Hi, my name is Tom Spiggle. I'm founder of the Spiggle Law Firm. And before we get started today, our topic today will be when are you, as your employer, required to allow you to bring a lawyer to a meeting at your office? But the legalese, this is not intended to be legal advice for you, nor does it form an attorney-client relationship with the Spiggle Law Firm. If you need a lawyer or you need advice specific to your case, got it. You should go hire a lawyer. So we get this question a lot, so let's say you've reported harassment or, some wrongdoing at your company, and then you get a meeting on your calendar with HR. And these meetings, right, or at least you imagine them, or even if you've been in some of them, can feel almost like a criminal case, right? Like you're the one, they got the lights on, they're putting the squeeze on you. And there's some truth to that, to some of these meetings. And so it comes up that people will call us and be like, I want you guys to come with me to this meeting because I want to be protected. So when is your employer required to allow you to bring a lawyer? The answer is in many cases, no. Even if you have a lawyer, your employer is entitled to talk to its employees. It's entitled to conduct an investigation. It's not required to allow you to have a lawyer to attend. Now, of course, it makes sense to have a lawyer or be talking to one. He or she can help you, behind the scenes, how to navigate this situation. But being able to, you don't have like a Fifth Amendment constitutional right to bring your lawyer to a meeting with HR. There are some exceptions to this. The primary one is if there's a lawyer, the HR brings a lawyer to that meeting and you are represented. So both of those things have to be true. So you walk in the meeting with HR, they say, thanks so much, Mr. Spiggle, for coming. I want to introduce you to company counsel, Sally Smith. And you're represented. You've got a lawyer too. So if the company knows that, then they shouldn't have that lawyer there to begin with. But if they don't, then this is a time for you to tell them, I have counsel related to this matter. I don't want to speak to this attorney here. And while there's not a law, right? There's not a state law in the books. There's certainly a federal law that says that you're entitled to have a lawyer in that situation, or that your employer is not entitled to speak to you. Under the bar rules of almost all states, there's a bar rule called 4.2, which says that an attorney cannot speak to a represented party, right? So I, as an attorney, cannot go speak to somebody who has an attorney without that attorney present, because that person has hired counsel and they're entitled to that advice. And I can't do an in run around that by trying to speak to that person without counsel. Now, you, as the represented party, you could decide to go forward and to talk without, to talk to that attorney. You could say, hey, I waive my right to have the attorney here. I want to go ahead and talk. Now, the other lawyer in the room, the company's lawyer, may not want to go forward with that because you're still a represented party. So yes, if you walk into a meeting and HR is there and the lawyer is there and you're represented, then you want to tell them, I have an attorney and I don't want to speak to this lawyer without my attorney. And there's good reason for that. There's good reason why you should be circumspect about going to meet with HR. While you may not be able to avoid the meeting, it certainly is true. And we have had cases where the company treats this as a way to try to box you into a corner, right? Try to get you to say things that they can later use against you. They're not using it in a way to try to help you to conduct the investigation, to get to the bottom of this. Sometimes they do. So I don't want to, paint with too broad a brush. Sometimes HR is doing the right thing and they're really just trying to figure out what is going on, which is why they are entitled to speak to you. But it is certainly true that HR works for the company. And there are times where, HR is either not fully in your corner or quite the opposite. They are circling the wagons to try to protect the company. And this is an opportunity to try to get you to talk and say some things that might damage your case later on. And of course, HR is better able to do that if they've got a lawyer in the room than if they don't. So if you're represented, you walk into this room and the other lawyer's there, you should tell them, I'm a represented party. I don't want to talk about this matter. Now, what if you're not represented? What if you don't have an attorney? Well, then the lawyer's entitled to talk to you. Certainly can say, I was not expecting to come to this room and have the company's attorney here. I would like uh, to postpone this meeting so I can consult with an attorney myself. That you might get some pushback from HR. They might try to cajole you into talking, while they are not required. Right, they can talk to you if you don't have an attorney, and even if they have an attorney in the room, they can. There's nothing wrong necessarily with them talking to you. But if you decide, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, could the company fire you? It's possible, but the company is a little bit over a barrel, particularly if what you have reported is what we call protected activity. So you have reported sexual harassment. You've reported that you're being discriminated against. You've reported that somebody else is being discriminated against by management. Some whistleblower activities are protected. If the company then turns around and fires you after that, then they're facing a retaliation claim, because under many laws, it is illegal for a company to retaliate against you for trying to do the right thing. So if they've got a lawyer there and the lawyer's any good and is advising the company, he or she should probably tell them, hey, we can't fire this person for postponing this meeting and for going to talking to their own lawyer without possibly getting a retaliation claim. So it's worth the ask to try to reschedule that meeting. And that's true with any meeting with HR. So if you go into a meeting with HR and it seems sort of funky and they're taking sort of a tone with you, even if there's not a lawyer there, you can certainly ask to postpone the meeting to give you some time to consult with counsel. Again, could they try to fire you? I mean, of course they can fire you. Would that be legal? In many instances, it would not be legal, and the company would be making things worse for itself by letting you go. So in most circumstances, you're not going to get fired for that. Again, you should always consult with your own lawyer. There are different state laws, and it always helps to have somebody advising you behind the scenes. But as a general matter, you're probably in a pretty strong spot to refuse the meeting, at least the first time. Now, if you continue to do that and stonewall, then the company may have a good argument for terminating you. The other way you might have the right to have a lawyer there is, again, if you are represented, if you have an attorney, you're represented by counsel, and HR, let's say there's not a lawyer there, but a lawyer is essentially giving them a list of questions to ask, right? They're just reading down the list, and this HR rep, he's not that smart usually, and all of a sudden he's using these legal terms and taking on this really aggressive form of questioning. That would still arguably be a violation of Bar Rule 4.2, because the attorney is essentially, the HR is just the puppet, and the attorney is the puppeteer, handing them questions to ask. So, would you know that necessarily? Not necessarily, right? I mean, but if it's fully transparent, I mean, if the HR is saying, well, I'd like to ask you these questions given to us by our attorney, you would have an argument. Again, if you have a lawyer, to say, I'm a represented party and your attorney can't talk to me without my attorney present. So that's another situation. The final one where you would have a right to have a lawyer, and this is fairly rare, but it's the chances of this are not zero, if there's some potential criminal liability here. So if you walk into the room, it's your director of HR and there's a cop there, or, let's say that, the FBI conducts a raid. They come in, they're going through boxes and they are asking employees to talk to them. Well, then you might have a Fifth Amendment right to counsel because you are being questioned by a law enforcement agency. And if they're doing it correctly, they should inform you that at the outside that you have a right to retain a lawyer, which is generally a good idea, even if you haven't done anything wrong. It is a crime, certainly, to lie to a federal agency, a federal agent. It's like an FBI agent. In many instances, it's also illegal to lie to a state, a state officer. And you don't want things getting twisted around in that meeting where they then have an argument later on that maybe you didn't do anything wrong with the underlying investigation, but you lied to, this investigator. And so they're going to bring a criminal charge. Again, there are many times law enforcement is just doing the right thing, and talking to them won't hurt you at all. If they're like, well, this cat got cornered in the tree and we want to know whose cat it is, I'm being a little bit facetious here, then you might always tell whose cat it is because there's not a lot of criminal liability there. But sometimes it's hard to tell. So again, if somebody's with a badge in that room, they should advise you that you have a right to counsel. But if they don't, you very well may have one. And it's a good idea to just tell them nothing until you have a chance to talk to a lawyer. And then you can always go back and talk to them. And it's not going to hurt you, no matter what they may tell you, as a criminal matter, for you to say, hey, I don't think I did anything wrong, but just out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to get a lawyer. I'll tell you a story of a client that we had that had reported wrongdoing to human resources, and she went in. She was advised by us. But she was willing to go talk to HR. She walked into the room, and there's the HR person and the attorney, and she told him, I'm represented by counsel in this matter, and I would prefer to have him present. And they tried to kind of weasel around this by saying, well, we're talking to you about a different matter, that's unrelated. But the truth is that it was very closely related to the wrongdoing that she had reported. And so she said, I want my lawyer present. And so they relented and let her go and said, okay, I'll allow you to bring your lawyer. So I came in to the next meeting, and there's the lawyer there, and he has a court reporter, right? So court reporters, you've seen them on TV. They're like, taking the notes, and it's an actual dictation of what happens. And you can use those records in court. So not only do they use court reporters in court, but they use them in depositions. Like anytime you need a certified transcript that you could potentially use in court. And we refused. And again, it was a little bit of a risk because I was there. Their lawyer was there. They're entitled to speak to their employee, but we weren't going to have a deposition, which is essentially what they were trying to do, without it being an actual deposition where they have to give notice. They have to tell you how it's going to be recorded. Your lawyer can be there. There can be certain objections. And so we left. We said, we're not going to do a deposition here. If you want to take a deposition of my client, well, we can talk about that later. And they eventually relented. They did have a meeting with this person without me or the other attorney present, and we were able to get a successful resolution of that case. But these things do happen, and they can be sticky. So I hope that helps. HR meetings can be fraught. There are, as we've discussed here, some circumstances under which you can bring an attorney. There are many circumstances in which you can't, and it probably makes sense to have a lawyer when you can, at least advising you behind the scenes and helping you watch out for trick questions and tripwires and things that, could affect your case. Hope that helps. If you found this useful, please share it with someone else who may be in a situation where they have these questions. Thanks so much.